Hey everyone, this is Oscar from Underdog, and today I want to introduce you to a concept that I like to call shadow harmonies. You might recall that a few weeks ago we did a video on shadow grooves, and what a shadow groove is where you take any kind of rhythmical input, you put a vocoder on that, and that turns it into kind of a dark atmospheric layer that you can tuck underneath other percussion. Today we're going to do something somewhat similar, but instead of purely rhythmical layers, we're going to use harmony layers. We're going to go from a straight up harmony kind of like this into a more rhythmical and rich version of itself by adding layers like this. Then when you add a beat to it, the entire product finally sounds like this. And the tools that we're going to use right now are Ableton's Spectral Resonator, a new effect for Live 11. But even if you don't use Ableton, I still invite you to follow along, to follow the thought process and the concept of the sound design. Let's get into Ableton right now. Before we go any further, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the little bell icon. Consider signing up for one of our classes on underdog.brussels and support us on the Underdog Patreon page. Share this video wherever you think people will like it, and with all this support, we will continue to bring you one free video every week. Okay, so for a shadow harmony, what we're going to need first is a drum kit to create some kind of rhythmical pattern, which then we're going to feed into the chords. So in Ableton, we make ourselves a MIDI track, which I've got here, and we get ourselves a drum rack. It doesn't really matter which one, because we're not really going to be listening to these drums in their natural form. What we're going to do is we're going to transform them into rhythmical chords. So for instance, you take yourself a drum rack like this, drop it in, and let's make ourselves a 1-bar loop. Let's select the area on the timeline, do Control-Shift-M or Command-Shift-M to create a new MIDI clip. Let me start with the basic house pattern, which has the bass drum there, 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 and there, and then also the snare drum there and there, and the hi-hats in between, like there, 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 and there. So this is a very standard pattern, and it sounds like this. Okay, so let's switch this up a little bit to create a little bit of variation. So for instance, I'm going to move these forward one, see what that feels like, and then maybe remove 2 of these bass drums, see what this feels like. Honestly, that's already pretty close to what I want. Maybe I'll just move this back onto where it originally was. Perfect, that's all I want. And now I'm gonna add in a little bit more rhythmical interest by adding a delay onto this, which is just gonna create some ghost notes in between. So we go back over here, we go to audio effects, we get delays, there we go. And just gonna bring this down to like 25%, and let's see what this feels like. Those hi-hats are a bit busy. I'm not sure we're going to keep them that way, but we can adjust the drum pattern afterwards. This is a rhythmical pattern that we're now going to feed into our chords. Now, the way that this might have been done in previous versions of Ableton would be where you take yourself a resonator and you place the resonator on there. And a resonator is nothing more than a bunch of resonant filters tuned to particular pitches. And if you tune those to particular pitches, then you get the feeling of a chord coming through. So here what we can do is we can choose the root note of the chord, and then how many semitones apart we want all the different filters to sit. That way we can create, for instance, a minor chord or a major chord or a 7th chord. And so it's going to resonate along. There are a few presets. As an example, we could take the Berlin presets, see how this feels. You make it 100% wet, and you get something that's tonal, that actually is harmonic, and that could be perfect for your track. However, this chord never changes. The chord always stays stable. And so what if you want the chord to change along with the harmony of your track? One option would be, of course, to automate the resonator, but then a better option would be to use Ableton's Spectral Resonator. This is a new effect in Ableton Live 11. So I'm going to delete this resonator, go in here and find myself the Spectral Resonator. There we go. Let's listen to this, what this sounds like straight out of the box. Okay. Not fantastic, right? But don't be deceived, this will sound fantastic. What this is doing right now is it's resonating at exactly 110 hertz, plus it's got a bunch of harmonics up above it. Like we could, for instance, make it resonate at 440 hertz. And we can start messing with the timbre there. But again, that's not what we want. What we want is we want to feed some chords into this thing, and then those chords will determine the harmony that this element is following. Okay, so let's program in some chords, right? All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch this loop out over 4 bars, like this, and I'm going to create a new track next to it for these chords. So Command-Shift-T or Control-Shift-T to create a new MIDI track. And these are going to be called the chords for the resonator. And what we're going to do here is create a MIDI clip of 4 bars, and we're going to do a chord progression that just changes once per bar. Very simple. What I'm going to do is I'm going to program in the most used chord progression in the history of humanity. If you don't know which one that is, feel free to watch this video on music theory right here. So I'm going to set my grid to 1 bar and I'm just going to write it in C major. So this is the 1st chord, this is the 5th chord, this is the 6th chord, and then there is also the 4th chord right here. And let's listen to just that chord progression using the Ableton's operator. I like to use operator because it only focuses on some sine waves like this. Perfect. The 4-chord song, the most common one in human history. So we go in here and let's also just invert them. Let's grab some of these notes and just invert them so it doesn't play up and down the keyboard quite as much. It stays a bit more stable. It sounds instead like this. All right, pretty simple stuff, a good starting point. So what we're going to do now is we're going to mute this thing. We're also going to delete the operator. We're no longer going to actually use the sound of this. We're going to use the chord information of this. So in Shadow Harmony, on this Spectral Resonator, we now have to set the input to MIDI right here, MIDI from, and then here I have to choose the right track, and that's the chords for the resonator right here. I also have to set it to poly, so it's not going to be monophonic, it's going to be polyphonic. And let's have a listen. So what are a few things that I would immediately change about this? I would take away those hi-hats. I think they're a bit too much. So let's maybe only play one of these hi-hats every now and then. And then in the Spectral Resonator, let's mess with this transpose button so that we can change the octave that it's resonating at. Very nice. The decay here. Pretty good. Let's go into the drum beat here and change the echoes. Perfect. And now we can just dial this into taste. So for instance, we can dampen the high frequencies, we can dampen the low frequencies. That makes those a little bit shorter, so you can emphasize how smeared out the highs or the lows are. You can also add some unison and some chorus to it. So I'm gonna mess with those settings for just a moment and just see where we get. Pretty good. I'm quite liking where this is going. And so now that we've got this kind of very bouncy ethereal layer, let's combine it with a layer that's more stable and more upfront. And then these two will combine into some kind of a whole that has both stability and this richness to it. So what I would do is I would create myself another MIDI track. and call this the normal synth. And then maybe just add over these chords. And the normal synth will just play these chords. Now, one of the synths that I've been using a lot recently is the Juno 106 by Roland. It sounds like this straight out of the box. Quite a beautiful, rich sound, all in all. And so I'd like to combine this with the shadow harmony, but what you'll notice is that this synth is probably a bit too full and it's going to overpower the shadow harmony. So to make this synth a little bit smaller, what I'm gonna have to do is bring down the sustain to, let's say, 0, to absolutely nothing, and then use the decay to just let the attack of this synth through. What I mean by that is the following. I look at the amplifier, what envelope is triggering it, so envelope number 1. And let's just reduce that down to 0. There we go. Like that. Nice. Let's add in the shadow harmony. Now the shadow harmony, it sounds a little bit too much like white noise up at the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dampen the high frequency even more, and I'm just going to take away this this hi-hats because I think it sounds too metallic. And now all together. Let's modify our drum patch a little bit here. Better. You see how this is creating some kind of interesting three-dimensional thing where we have both the benefit of the normal synth and then the benefit of this secondary pulsating layer in the back. Another example that I did, which was the one that we used in the intro, was the following. So I had myself this normal synth. All right, again, the Juno 106, like that. And then it's just this chord progression over and over, these two simple chords. And here's the shadow harmony. Simple kit with a delay, the resonator, and some EQing to take out some of those harsh high frequencies. And so the whole composition together then with a beat sounds something like this. Hopefully you can use this technique to match the sound design of your productions. In this case, for instance, I modified it to be a bit more muted, a bit less joyous to suit this more techno composition. So there you have it, shadow harmonies. Leave a comment below if you found this helpful. Come show us on the Discord channel what you made with these tutorials. Keep watching another music production video right here. Until next time, stay producing, be good to one another, and take care. Bye bye.